Hello, everybody. This is Bryan Thomas Schmidt, and this is a replay of the first live episode of Creator Talk on TikTok. Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. U.S. Central Time. I'll be doing this with authors, musicians, and artists. Our first guest is best-selling and award-winning author Tori Eldridge. So let me tell you a little about Tori here. Now, Tori is married to a guy named Tony, who is the producer of the Equalizer films with Denzel Washington. But Tori also used to be one of the dancers on the last couple seasons of The Love Boat. So she started out doing that. She's a great dancer. You can see a lot of videos on her wall. Tori is also an Anthony, Lefty, and Macavity award-nominated author of the acclaimed Lily Wong series. I told you guys about that. Anyway, The Ninja's Blade is the first book. The Ninja Betrayed, The Ninja Daughter, and The Ninja's Oath is the latest, which is actually out in hardcover and just came out recently. Her short stories have been published in horror, dystopian, and other literary anthologies, including my anthology, Surviving Tomorrow, which was a COVID charity anthology. She has a narrative, a poem that appears in the inaugural reboot of Weird Tales magazine. The 100th anniversary edition of Weird Tales is out now. That's edited by tomorrow night's guest, Jonathan Mayberry, who is a good friend of Tori's and mine. Her screenplay, The Gift, earned a semifinalist spot for the Academy Nickel Fellowship. That's probably the most prestigious fellowship in screenwriting, and it's been around for decades and decades. She performed as an actress, singer, and dancer on Broadway, television, and film, as I mentioned Love Boat earlier. Tori holds a 5th degree black belt in Toshindo Ninjutsu. So, no heckling tonight, because she'll just come out of the screen and clean you up. And she's traveled the U.S. teaching ninja, martial arts, and women's empowerment. You can see her website at torieldridge.com. Again, she doesn't have enough followers yet on here to have her video on, but maybe we can change that by the end of the night. Please follow her. She's fascinating. She's a sweetheart, and she's a good friend. She'll teach you how to cook the recipes in her book. I just watched her show us a 2-minute egg recipe earlier today, and her books are just a lot of fun. And I think I got your books out of order, Tori. I just realized. Sorry about that. I think the first one was Ninja's Daughter. Ninja's Daughter, right? Okay, sorry. Anyway, all that said, welcome to Creator Talk and TikTok Live, Miss Tori Eldridge. How are you tonight?
I'm great. I am psyched to talk to you, my friend.
I'm psyched to talk to you too. How's life in California doing? You guys having a good weather out there right now?
Oh, yeah, like 90 degrees. Sunny
Ooh.
90, I mean, what's not to like?
I'm wearing a sweatshirt. It's like in the 40s here. I've been trying not to turn my heat on here in Kansas, but I finally turned it on. Anyway,
Woo, 40s. Oh,
so let's talk about a little bit about, why don't we start with your TV career and move into writing a little bit, because you did, like I said, you were a dancer on the Love Boat. Your entry into in entertainment in general was through dancing and theater and such, right?
yeah. I set my eyes on Broadway when I was 16, and when I was 19, I landed my first Broadway musical with Michael York, if you remember him.
Wow, yeah, Michael York. Yeah, I love Michael York. Yeah.
Yeah. Went on tour with the late great Anthony Quinn and Zorba, and then I was in the
Oh, yeah.
original First National Company of Cats.
Awesome. The original National Company of Cats. That's pretty. Now I remember you
Yeah.
doing some. She has some videos of her doing dances from that with the old cast members. So I know those are around somewhere. I don't know if they're on TikTok yet or not, but they're around.
Right.
Yeah. And you grew up in Hawaii, is that right?
Yeah, born and raised in Honolulu.
Born and raised in Honolulu. Yeah, so tragic what happened with that fire recently there.
Oh, I know. My auntie had a store there. My mom's family. Well, I'm Hawaiian, Chinese, Norwegian, so my mom grew up in Wailuku, and her sister had a store and everything, and my cousin inherited, burned to the ground and everything. But that's it, yeah.
Yeah.
It's sad. They're rebuilding. So
Yeah. Well, that's good. That's good. Yeah, it'll take years to rebuild, but I hope that. I mean, the sad part is all the historic stuff that you never really can rebuild it. You can recreate it, but you can't ever bring it back the way it was, and
yeah.
that's really
Lahaina,
tragic.
that was a real old fishing town. So whatever they do to rebuild, it's not going to be the same. So
No.
but they're doing what they can.
Yeah, and all those poor lives lost, and the lives that are changed forever. That you know, that's just sad. Anyway, folks, not to be a morbid show tonight, but you got into those shows, and where'd you go from there?
Oh, I left Cats when I was in DC, and I came out LA to try my hand at TV film, and just ended up as a Love Boat Mermaid. On the last season, Terry Hatcher, she got her start as a Love Boat Mermaid too. Go
She did. I
figure.
didn't realize that. Oh, interesting.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
what a hoot.
yeah.
So it
So
wasn't
it was
until
just a
if you have any Final Fantasy people out there, they might get a kick out of. I did the performance motion capture for Aki Ross, who was the lead for Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within. 98% of
hey,
that whole movie was motion captured.
interesting. So you did that. That's awesome. That's
Yeah,
awesome,
it
folks.
was kind of a neat thing.
Yeah. So and then you pretty much what made you decide to become an author? You kind of I mean those were back in your young days. You were in your like early 20s, late teens, right? When you started all that Love Boat stuff.
Yeah, well, I think the Broadway thing that began at 19, and then through the early 20s, and then Tony, I married him, and had a couple of my kids, and at that time he had just shifted into producing. We were getting a lot of screenplays, so I was reading a lot of screenplays, and I had an idea for one and worked it, and that's the one that got the Nicole semifinalist nod. And I was
Gotcha.
like, okay, all right. But everybody who read it was saying, oh my gosh, the way you write the prose, you should really be writing novels. And so I did. I did.
Oh, okay.
But
So now, so Tony, I mentioned Tony earlier. Tony has now become a pretty big name producer. He's done things like Equalizer with Denzel Washington, like 3 films there at least. He's developing some stuff with a lot of other people. I know Jonathan Mayberry. Was he involved in V Wars? I can't remember.
no, no,
Okay.
it wasn't.
Okay, he's done. Anyway, Tony Eldridge, and Tony wrote the really nice foreword for one of my anthologies that I did with Jonathan called Joe Ledger Unstoppable that came out in
Right.
2017.
And now we're going to have Joe Ledger Unbreakable coming out next month. And I
Right.
have a Lily Wong crossover
That's
with
right.
Joe Ledger's Echo Team.
Yes, and so that's coming out in November 10th. We've got stories by Tori. We've got Jonathan doing some stuff. Ray Porter, who's the audiobook guy for Ledger Figures, wrote his first story for this as well, and it's really a heart-wrenching story. It's really a beautiful story. There's stories by Wayne Brady, the comedian, has written a story with Maurice Brodus for this, his first appearance in prose. It's set in the universe of their new novel that'll be coming out soon. So that's a pretty cool book that's coming out that you all want to check out. Bunch of different stories. Anyway, it's all focused around Joe Ledger and his team of operatives who basically fight zombies and other vampires and other monsters for the government and a secret agency. And that's all I'll say at this point. But there's a whole bunch of really cool novels that Jonathan's written, and we'll talk about that tomorrow when Jonathan's on. But
Yeah,
anyway,
I was so psyched to be invited onto that because I have wanted my Chinese Norwegian modern day ninja to play in that Joe Ledger world for quite a while. So that was a fun thing.
yeah, it's cool. It's cool. And I'm a fan of Jonathan. Of course, he's such a great guy, and I'm a fan of his universe too. So it's always been when I pitched that idea for Unstoppable to him. I expected he might say no, but he not only said yes, he said you work on it with me, and we've been partners ever since on doing different stuff. In fact, we co-read a Joe Ledger story, so it's been a real good partnership, and we've really enjoyed it, and we've become great friends. So that's what I love about making anthologies is you get the opportunity to work with people you want to get to know better. You get to put them in books with the people that they admire and they respect, and you get to get them more exposure, all of that. So tell us about Lily Wong. We talked about it a little bit, but let's get into Lily Wong now because this is the series that you all need to go out and buy and check out. She also has a fantasy novel, which we'll talk about a little later, kind of a dark fantasy, right?
Yeah, very dark.
Yeah. So first, the Lily Wong series. It's kind of a mystery thriller series. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's definitely mystery thriller and also interestingly enough cultural family dynamic. My heroine, Lily Wong, she's 25. Her mother is a Hong Kong immigrant financier. Her father is used to be a Norwegian farmer from North Dakota and has become an authentic Hong Kong cuisine chef. And she lives on the second floor above his Chinese restaurant. But Lily, her backstory is she grew up with wushu martial arts and studying ninja on the sly until her younger sister was raped and murdered when Lily was a first year college student. And she dropped out of college and she stopped doing competitive martial arts and just focused on the ninja arts and becoming a protector rescuer of women and children. In essence, becoming a big sister to a city where she feels she failed as a big sister to her blood. And she works for a women's shelter. And the first book, The Ninja Daughter, and the second book, The Ninja's Blade, they both take place in Los Angeles. There's some pretty gritty issues, Lily, she's fighting, helping women out of domestic violence, commercial sex trafficking of youth. There's some really gritty stuff, but at the same time, there's a lot of humor. There's a lot of family. There's a huge cultural element.
And great action.
And then
great action, people. Great action.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. That was one of my big goals, because people don't realize that there is a ninja martial art, that that there are thousands of us studying this all around the world, probably in your town.
And because ninjas kind of rose to fame in things like Shogun and Japanese movies, and they're these guys in hoods that kind of sneak in and just assassinate everybody. And that's the stereotype of what everybody knows about it, but it's much more complicated.
Yeah, well, it's broader. Of course, all of that stuff, did happen in feudal Japan, and so much of what we do is so skilled it appears magical and has qualities of Tendai Buddhism and, mudra and mantra and stuff that make it appear mystical. So, of course, then you get all the, flying ninja and all this kind of, stuff. And then you get the comedy, right? All the Ninja Turtles and everything. So I wanted to show people as authentic a view of modern day ninja as I could. So, yeah, there's a lot of action.
Yeah, I thought the most authentic ninja movie was Chris Farley's Beverly Hills Ninja, but maybe I'm wrong. No, but seriously, Tori writes about this, but she's actually a practitioner of the ninja arts, but also, what was it, Taekwondo?
Toshindo is a modern evolution of the ninja arts. Yeah, my teacher was Stephen K. Hayes. Is back in the what was it, the 80s? He was pretty well credited for bringing the ninja arts into the West. And so he wanted to teach it in a way that was, relevant to modern day and self-defense, because that's really the heart of what we do. So I infuse it in there. And then the third book, The Ninja Betrayed, takes Lily and her mother to Hong Kong. Lots of stuff going on there, triads. And the fourth book, The Ninja Zone, that's like crazy. If you guys are listening out there, you've never met Lily Wong, dive in with The Ninja Zone. Just dive right in. I got you. If you dig it, you can go back and catch the others. But it's crazy because it's in Shanghai and Japan, and we've got, ninja and triads and assassin, and it's crazy. There's so much action in this book.
What got you started in the martial arts? I wanted to talk about that real quick. Is that a natural outgrowth of your interest in dancing, or where did that come from? Or was it like, just living on the streets of LA and being scared, because women get assaulted? I mean, what led you to it?
Oh, well, I was always interested since I was a child, but once I started doing dance, that took all of my physical energy. So when my eldest son was 5, I put him in karate. And by then I had kind of retired mostly from dance. And so I was watching and I was like, I can do this. And sure enough, I could. And a year later, I was like teaching, and it was crazy. I ended up getting a black belt in Tang Sudo, Korean karate, and Toshindo, ninja martial arts, within 1 month of each other. Because I was doing both. Yeah, I ended up doing both.
That's amazing. So then you said you decided obviously to write that in your book because it's something you know very well. So obviously this is somebody writing from knowledge, not just hey ninjas are cool. So you're going to get a lot of authenticity. But now you mentioned in that we were talking about Ninja's Oath. You said you went out of L.A. where the first two books were set to Shanghai and other places. Did you go there and research these places? How did you come to write about these places?
I did. As luck would have it, my eldest son fell in love with a woman from Hong Kong. Go figure. They both work for Nike, so
Yeah.
I went to visit him when he lived in Shanghai, and we spent Christmas there with her, and her parents came in. And then after visiting in Shanghai, then we all went to Hong Kong. And so I got to see Hong Kong not only as a tourist, but with my daughter, now daughter-in-law, and her family.
So local.
And
Yeah.
then,
Yeah.
yeah, and it was kind of the same thing with Shanghai because at that point, our son had lived there for years, and so
Oh,
he
and
really had a really
he
good
has the
time.
cutest grandchild. This child is so adorable. What is he like? He's like at least a year old now, or maybe two?
Her name is Moana,
Her
and
name, sorry.
that's okay. She's going to be turning 3 in December, and
Three,
I am
yeah.
expecting my first grandson in February.
Okay, okay. Yeah, great. Yeah, I always enjoy her your Facebook posts about all of that and having fun with them and your son and all that. So she takes, it's really great to see a mother take such delight in her kids the way you do. I mean, you just effuse love when you talk about him and your grandchild. So it's really nice. Anyway, you went to Shanghai. You just saw Hong Kong.
Yeah, yeah. And it's funny when we did that vacation. As soon as I was excited about Hong Kong because I was thinking of it as book research because I knew the Ninja Betrayed would go to Hong Kong.
Right.
But when I stepped foot in Shanghai, that's when I realized, oh my gosh, I must bring Lily here. And so that's why I took her there in the Ninja's Oath. And of course, I had to go in that book. I had to take it to Japan because the Ninja's Oath is like the epic finale of a 4-book set. And
Oh,
so I had to bring back all the beloved characters, the assassin Tran and her father's crotchety cook, former triad enforcer Li Chang, and of course Lily's sensei from Japan. And of course I wanted to go there because my parents met and married in Tokyo, and both of my
well,
sisters were born in Japan. So I have huge connections with Japan. So that was
yeah.
like
Well,
really important.
it's like a real family connection. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So let's talk about your writing process a little bit. You just said that the Ninja's Oath is kind of the wrap up of a 4-book arc, which doesn't mean you can't start with it. It's a good start. It's written as an entry point in the series, she said earlier. So you guys could start with that, or you could go back to the Ninja's Daughter. But the point is, do you plan these out in advance? You knew in advance the book was going to go there. Did you plan all 4 books in advance? Are you a heavy outliner, or are you a pantser somewhere in between? What do you do when you're writing?
Well, the whole thing came from a short story that was kind of stream of consciousness, and that's how I discovered Lily Wong. But when I wrote that story, I realized that I was writing what could be one of the first scenes of a novel that would start a
Hmm.
series. And that scene is actually in The Ninja Daughter. Oh, and by the way, it's the ninja daughter, not the ninja's daughter,
Okay, sorry,
because
sorry.
the ninja in this family is the woman.
Ah, gotcha. Ninja Daughter. Sorry.
Yeah, but before I wrote the Ninja Daughter, yes, I like to outline. I take a lot of hikes where I expand my ideas, and it gets bigger and bigger, and I do outlines, and I work on Scrivener, and sometimes I'll do even little mini chapter summaries. And then, of course, when I start writing, all of that can change. And
Sure.
chapters I thought I was going to write, they get cut, and chapters that I suddenly need come in, and my characters say things that I didn't know they were going to say, and then I go there, and so that's fun.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah. So you
yeah,
said you use Scrivener, right? Scrivener is
yeah,
a writing program for those who don't know it. It's actually pretty affordable. I use it for all of my writing of novels, and I have it connected between my iPhone, my iPad, and my computer. So literally, the files update, and I log in from anywhere, and I can keep going. So if I walk out of the house, go to the doctor's office, sit in the doctor's chair. I can pick up the scene I was in the middle of writing and write it on my iPhone while I wait. It's a pretty cool program, and it's got really great outlining tools, and there's all kinds of there's note cards that you can put on the screen and all this really stuff, and you basically build little subfolders and chapters, and you can move things around. You can save them. You can put some that'll be in the final, and you can put some up. They're kind of the off-screen notes, that things you didn't use or whatever, so you don't have to throw anything away. It's pretty cool. So just for those who don't know Scrivener, I wanted to mention that.
Yeah, I really dig it. And then, once I've finished it and edited it as many times as I feel I can, and I get to that point where I want to take it off to beta readers, then I compile it into Word doc, and for going forward, it's all on Word.
Yeah,
But
I'm the same. I'm the same way, because Scrivener does a pretty good job of exporting to Word. But once I get in that Word, I don't want to put it all back. It's too big of a pain in the butt to put it all back. Yeah.
Exactly. So I didn't know what I was going to write in the second book. I knew what I wanted to write about, and so generally, what happens with me is I have a setting, and I have an interest. So I wanted to explore further the commercial sex trafficking of youth in Los Angeles, and so the Ninja's Blade began with a couple months of research. And out of there came my characters. Same thing with the Ninja Betrayed. I knew I was taking Lily to Hong Kong. I knew it would involve her grandfather's finance company, and I knew it would put her mother, who was the LA director, in jeopardy. More than that, I didn't know. And so I had to do a lot of research, not just on Hong Kong, but on finances.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, I bet you. And of course, the sex trafficking, the ins and outs of that crazy, crazy world, which is infinitely complex and infinitely scary and infinitely everywhere these days.
Yeah, absolutely. And then with the Ninja's Oath, I knew it was going to be in Shanghai. I knew it would involve Li Chang's family. And so it all started with researching Shanghai, which ended up bringing me from the Japanese occupation before World War II, all the way through Chiang Kai-shek and Mao Zedong and the notorious Green Gang and everything. And I built a whole genealogy for Li that was entwined into the history of Shanghai. And it was out of there that the plot emerged and the characters that I needed for this story.
Great. Hey, listen, guys, I want to remind you, those in the audience, thank you for coming and listening to Creator Talk. It's a new live show that will be every night at this time, Monday through Friday. I have different guests every night. And please like the live and follow. Gifts are optional. I really am not going to sit here and say, please give gifts. If you do, it'll be used for things like giveaways and things in the future down the line, which we'll try to do. Anyway, as we build the show. But anyway, thank you for listening. In just a few minutes, we'll open it up for questions. But first, tell us a little bit, Tori, about kind of the road to publication with these books.
Oh, my goodness. Well, I timed everything around my 50th birthday so that I would stop teaching, training, and traveling the United States teaching the ninja martial arts because I wanted to become a novelist. But in the course of writing and submitting and rewriting and re-envisioning and submitting and conferences and networking and having a podcast where I met a lot of people who would become mentors and things of that nature, I had a lot of short stories published before I got that first 2-book contract for novels. So it took 7.5 years before I finally landed the 2-book deal for The Ninja Daughter and The Ninja's Blade. But interestingly enough, at that time, I had 2 books in submission. One was The Ninja Daughter, and the other was a very early version of what would eventually become Dance Among the Flames, which is a dark fantasy thriller about a desperate mother who rises from the slums of Bahia, Brazil, to embrace Kimbanda black magic on a quest for empowerment and ultimate revenge. And it's a wild book. It spans 3 continents, 40 years, past life, 1550 France, Brazilian gods, goddesses, sex, death, murder. I mean, it's got, oh my gosh.
Got all the goodies.
It's got all, it's
Now
got all the
listen,
goodies.
I was married to a Brazilian, and I actually used to teach African and traditional religions. So I spent a lot of time studying Umbanda and Olambu and all those things. In when I spent time in Brazil. So how did you become familiar with wanting to use it? Did you go to Brazil and travel, or how did you learn about that? From something in the U.S. or in Brazil?
Yeah, both. That screenplay we talked about, that was set in Brazil, and it was. I actually had a screenplay that I was working on before that was like the learning process that I had to scrap,
Oh,
and it was set in Brazil, and I had to rethink everything, and so I had to look at what in all my research, what in my story, what am I attracted to. And it was the Brazilian spiritualism. I was completely captivated by Umbanda, and which I found very empowering. And of course, the dark side in me was very, was like, whoa, but look at this Kimbanda. We got to work these two together. And it was out of that interest and that research that screenplay came and that novel. And back then, I actually went to Rio de Janeiro because my son's preschool teacher was from Rio de Janeiro, and she was
oh,
like my go-to Brazilian connection for all of my questions.
do
And
you?
I called her. Yeah, I called her on the phone one day, and I had all these questions. She was like, "I'm so sorry, but I'm just getting on a plane. I'm going home, to visit. You should come." So I did.
Wow. So fala português?
Uh, yeah, no. But I did listen. I listened to it for 2 weeks, and it was so gorgeous. And I tried to blend it with my extensive years in Spanish, and that helped a little bit. It's so beautiful. The
The,
sound of
the
it.
trick is the trick is to
Language.
learn the difference in the endings. Like where you have Trinidad in Spanish is Trinidade. It's always Dagi, and there's several
Yes.
endings like that in Portuguese. I used to have to do missionary work back and forth between Brazil and Mexico. So I speak more Brazilian though than I do Spanish because I wanted to talk to my mother-in-law mainly at the time. But you want to talk to family when you need to talk to family.
Oh, yeah.
So I did learn about an intermediate speaker. I'm losing a lot of it though, as I don't speak it much anymore. Got divorced and all, but yeah, no, I love Brazil. It's a fascinating. And you're right. The spiritualism there is absolutely fascinating, and it's all. Brazil is such a polyglot anyway. I mean, you've got
Yeah.
the biggest expat Japanese thing in the world in Sao Paulo, which basically is little Tokyo. It's like walking into Tokyo in the middle of Brazil. You've got a place called Americana near north of Sao Paulo that has the only official Confederate U.S. cemetery outside the United States, and there are Brazilians there who every day they're speaking Portuguese. Eu falo português contigo, como vai você, legal, all day, and then when you talk to them in English, they say, "Hey y'all, how you doing today?" And that's how they talk. It's so freaky. You go there and sound like Southerners. So Brazil is such a fun place. There's little towns that are like Germany. I went to little Finland there. And so the cool thing about the development, all of that said, the cool thing about the development of the religions is they're polyglots too. A lot of them are borrow from African beliefs and tribal beliefs of the different Indian tribes and various that populated early settlers in Brazil. They mix Catholicism in, they mix in all this stuff. So it really is fascinating, all of the different layers and things that come out.
Absolutely. And, really, I think it just resonated with me as a multicultural person, and growing up in Honolulu, and, it just was so fascinating to me. And now, I just finished another book that could possibly, hopefully, start a series, and where my agents are shopping it now. And this one dives into my native Hawaiian roots. So
Very
it's,
cool. You know what
yeah.
I loved about? I was going to say one more thing about Brazil before we get. off that subject. But I wanted to say the one thing I loved about Brazil was the diversity. It was like every time I was there, I was like, this is what heaven looks like because there's so many different shades. You know, they have like 300 different terms for skin color in the Portuguese language in Brazil because everybody is a polyglot. Everybody is mixed, and so there's dark skin, there's light skin, and all different varieties in between. And it was really great looking around. You see everybody mixed together of all these different shades and it's totally normal. It's not anything abnormal. Whereas it's a lesson we're unfortunately still learning in the United States. But that's what I loved about it.
Oh, it's so true. I felt so at home. To begin with, everybody assumed I was Brazilian, so I would be walking the streets with my friend Adriana, and she would be like, "Okay, if I suddenly start speaking Portuguese to you, don't say anything, just nod and whatever." She goes, because we're passing through an area or a person or something. I don't want anybody to know that you're not native. And then when I was leaving, the guy, with the passports, they were so surprised, that I was
Yeah,
American.
that's funny. I had a couple of experiences like that too. After I started learning Portuguese, they were like, "Are you Where are you from in Brazil?" And I was like, "Me?" I thought I was pretty white bread, to be honest with you. But anyway, okay. So your new novel about. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt the flow, but I wanted to mention that point because I think it's important. Hawaii. Talk about it. Oh, you said it in Hawaii, and it's what is it? A thriller? You said.
No, I would, well, yeah, it has aspects of that, but I wouldn't really put it there. I would put mystery, but also adventure, because
Mhm.
my protagonist is a national park ranger.
Oh,
Um, Working in Oregon, but she comes back to Kauai for her tutu's 85th birthday, and her whole family is in utter turmoil, and her grandmother's homesteading and her family's homesteading way of life is at risk, and so there's all these things as she hunts down, trying to find her cousins and trying to solve these things. There's also this huge family element of dealing with another crisis that's going on. So it was
very cool.
just very, very, it's a very enriching experience for me to write, actually.
So they're selling that right now. So hopefully we'll see it in late 2024, maybe 2025, more likely at this point of the year. But you can look forward to that. Are there more ninja books coming?
Not more ninja books, the ninja short story, as we talked about, and Joe Ledger Unbreakable. And I have another short story that involves the Hawaiian god Kanaloa and this Japanese serpent, and mixed in with the World War II Battle of Guadalcanal, coming out in a anthology called Combat Monsters, and that'll be fun. And then I have another a thriller short story that's coming out in an anthology, but it hasn't been announced, so I can't mention that. But I imagine that would either be coming out late 2024 or early 2025.
Great. So listen, guys, I said I would open it up to questions. Let's go ahead and do that. If you have questions related to Tori's work or writing in general or all that kind of stuff, we'll start reading the comments here and taking questions for anybody who's out there. I hope there's people out there. I can't really tell how many people are out there. I see people constantly coming and going. So when you have questions, we'll get to them. In the meantime. So the Ninja Cycles, this was all you planned is like a 4-book cycle. You don't plan to do another series with Lily Wong.
Oh no, actually, it was meant to be an open series. I
Oh,
think my publisher would be very interested in more, but I just got to a point where I really felt like this fourth book was going to be this big climactic thing, and I wanted to tie that up because I knew there were other things I wanted to write. So
sure.
I'm not closing the door on Lily Wong. I just don't have anything else planned.
Gotcha. Not immediately. I gotcha. I gotcha. How long does it typically take you to write a novel?
I think about 9 months.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, and then if I set it aside after that and start writing something else and maybe come back and do an even more polish, certainly within a year. but
I
it's
was going to say,
somewhere
how many
in there.
drafts do you do? Well, in that initial 9 months, is that just the first draft?
Oh God, no.
Okay.
No, that when I say 9 months, I'm like it's ready to turn into somebody. You
Okay.
know.
No, that's what I'm at. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So you finish your first draft, but then you do polish drafts and all these kind of things. Do you have beta
Yeah.
readers, or who do you run it by? Your agent, or who are the people that you run it by?
Each book is a little different. There's usually a few beta readers, and I choose them very carefully so that I already know that whatever they have to say is going to matter to me.
Yeah.
Sometimes people send out to a bunch of beta readers, and then they've got to decide whether that feedback means anything. I already know it will. And a lot of times, my beta readers are chosen for a particular specialty. Like they might be an excerpt in something, or a native from a place, or a particular kind of action thriller writer or something. Whatever it is I'm trying to
Yeah.
hone in on. That's why I choose them.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah,
Yeah.
choosing beta readers I think is one of the biggest challenges as an author, and I always tell people you have to give them you have to tell most people what you want, and there's some people that if you're fellow authors after a certain point you don't have to do that, which is why so many of us use authors and people, but you have to give them the freedom to hurt your feelings for one, and for
Yeah.
another, what are the things you're looking for? You want to know where they laugh, where they cry, where they're angry, where they're frustrated. What works, what doesn't. All of these are the things that that you need to comment on, and what did you get wrong, those kind of things. And so you
Yeah.
really need thoughtful readers, not just people who are reading for fun because they're curious. Hey, Tori wrote a book, let's check it out, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that's great. That's great. Does
Then
Tony, I assume Tony gives you feedback?
he does, but it's not at that point. At this point, I'm still editing after the feedback, and then I polish it up, and then I read the entire book aloud to him in like 2 days. So
Oh wow.
if for him it's like entertainment. He gets a big bucket of popcorn and he sits there for story time 2 days in a row, and we get through the entire thing. And while I'm reading aloud to him, I'm highlighting everything I want to go back and adjust or whatever. So then I do more passes, and then I polish, and then I send it to my
this
agent.
this is the smartest process, writers. If you're out there, look, until you read it aloud, you're not going to know how it really sounds on people's lips. In your head, you can hear it one way, but when you actually try to read it out loud, you have to say it. You see whether the rhythms are off. You see where you're getting a little repetitive. You see where some sentences are maybe a little too long or they need some punctuation. You see all of these kind of things. And having another person listen to it will give you, or read it to you in some cases, will give you that important feedback that you need to find and identify those spots and make it better. It's such a great thing that she's doing with this is a great part of your tool set. When I edit a lot of books for people, as Tori knows, and one of the things, I mean, my main income is as freelance editor of novels, and I can tell people, I always tell them, you need to read it. You need to read it. If you're wanting just to fix typos, you start at the back, you read the last paragraph first, you read it out loud, then you fix what you need to fix, you go to the next paragraph, you read it out loud. The reason for that is because otherwise you're going to get immersed in your story. All the stuff's going to come back in your head as you wrote it, and you're going to start missing stuff. So the technical way to fix the most stuff, if you're just looking to proofread your novel, is to read it backwards, starting at the last paragraph. However, when you want to hear the story and hear what works, like what she's talking about, what she's doing, like just reading it aloud for 2 days, that's brilliant. I'm sure that's been a huge help.
Well, it's funny. I read aloud when I write, and I read aloud dialogue when I write it, when I create it. I read aloud when I'm editing. I also will have my computer read to me.
Yes.
And that's interesting because it takes all the emotion out. It's just a computer reading to me. And I also like to do that when I'm at final ends of editing because then it's slower and I can check for typos because I'm not tempted to just, how we do, read across words. It's like when the
Yes,
computer's
exactly.
reading, they read
Exactly.
every word.
Yeah, that's what I was saying about reading it backwards. You start skipping ahead, and then there's stuff that your brain fills in because the way we all read is our brain reads the minimum words and fills in the gaps. And
Yeah.
so That's why sometimes you can be writing about, like, the example I always use is, at one time somebody wrote, I have 25 pencils on my desk. They wrote it on Facebook, but I thought they said 25 penises, and I was like, what's the story behind that, right? And that's because for some reason my mind read pen and the S at the end and filled in the gap wrong. And that's literally but that's literally the psychology of how reading works. So when you're so close to it, that's so easy that's why I think people miss that stuff. And that's
Yeah.
why forcing yourself to read it aloud forces you to look at every word, if you can just slow down and not skip over stuff and not do all that and get all that out. Yeah, exactly. Now, so does Tony get used to you hearing you talk to yourself while you're writing?
Yes, he does. He'll he'll come in and he's like, "Did you say something to me?" I'm like, "I'm writing." He's like, "Oh, okay, fine." And also, the other funny thing that happens in our house is when I'm figuring out a fight scene, because I choreograph things and then I try them and I act them out myself in our living room or in our car, depending on where the fight is. I will periodically like walk into his office and be like, "Can I borrow your neck?" And
I can imagine the crazy scenarios coming. Look at this lady going crazy in her car. You're over there doing some kind of people are like, what is this lady doing?
We had a total, like, abduction and fight scene that happened in a car in the Ninja Betrayed in Hong Kong. And I had to go work the whole thing out in my car, in my garage. It was hilarious. Because I want to make sure I can do it.
If
See,
the
that's the
neighbor
thing. I make it as authentic as I can. My rule of thumb for Lily is the things she does are either things I've executed, things I've taught, things I've witnessed some of my awesome ninja friends doing, or things that I've researched and probably seen video of somebody else doing. I also have a small background when I was a kid in gymnastics, so I have some understanding of some of that. I've also done wushu, spear and kickboxing and ground fighting, and so I have a lot of things that make it possible for me to envision and choreograph and figure it out. Whatever it is I want to put in there. The Ninja's Oath has this battle royale climactic fight scene that I think it was Best Thriller Books. They said they commented on it and said it would make Quentin Tarantino blush.
No, it's true. You did. I noticed, and I forgot to read that there were so many accolades. It was like the mystery book of the year or something. Your debut novel or something like that, wasn't it? One group called it that, or the thriller of the year.
The Ninja Daughter, you mean?
Yeah, I think it was Ninja Daughter. I don't know. Amazon. You know how the publishers put all that stuff on Amazon. When I was looking
Yeah.
at the listing, there was some kind of listing about that. It might have been Ninja's. The page I'm on is Ninja's Blade, but what did it say? It said named one of the best books of 2020 by I don't know who. It's quoted in the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. That's what I was thinking of. But
Yeah, and then we got some nice cred on the LA Times, one of five mysteries, not to miss, that kind of a
yeah,
thing.
yeah,
And,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and then I think The Ninja Betrayed was the 2021 Crimson Scribe winner for Best Book of the Year. And yeah, and that was also nominated for an Anthony. So yeah,
And
it's been fun.
obviously you've done well because they wanted to move into hardcover. So obviously your sales are getting better.
Oh my God,
Uh,
and the cover is so gorgeous. Wow,
it is.
it's
You guys,
crazy.
I got to tell you something. There's been a problem, and this happened unfortunately to both Tori and I with our recent releases, where there's because of paper shortages and other problems, books did not get shipped to bookstore on time, especially hardcovers. So, these her book and my book Shortcut, her book Ninja's Oath could really use some love. If you're interested in this series at all, go out and buy them. It's really hard when you launch your book and you have those kind of problems because there's literally nothing you can do, but it has a huge impact on how people stock books in the shelves the first 2 weeks of sales, and a lot of momentum that you get on your book. So please check out this Lily Wong series from her. And what was the other book called? I'm sorry, I forget it off the top of my head.
Dance Among the Flames.
Dance Among the Flames, which is the kind of the Brazilian dark fantasy with thriller aspects you want to check. I'm definitely going to read that. And I need to, and I actually own the first two ninjas, and I've started reading one, but I need to catch up. They're on my stack of mini. I get so many requests. So
Oh
anyway,
my
I
gosh.
apologize,
Yeah.
but I will get to them. And again, she has another Lily Wong story that's coming out in Joe Ledger Unbreakable, which will be out November 10th, and that will be on audiobook as well as paperback and hardcover. So that's edited by tomorrow night's guest, Jonathan Mayberry.
I'm going to
Uh,
see him next weekend. We're both at the Las Vegas Book Festival.
oh, that's right. He just found out today. He fell and injured himself. I don't know if you knew he injured his foot.
What?
He just went to the hospital and he got a cast, but he doesn't need to get surgery for it to heal. He's got some kind of support cast. So when you see him, don't be surprised if he's limping around a little bit. But yeah,
Yeah.
he tripped over something walking somewhere recently and just like really screwed himself up. I don't remember the full story, but yeah, he was. I was surprised too because he told me, "Yeah, I just got out of the hospital." I'm like, "What?" We talk almost every day because we're working on so many
Right.
projects. So I was just like,
Well,
"What?"
thanks
How,
for letting
it's
me
like, "Hey,
know.
why didn't you tell me, dude?" But
Great.
anyway, yeah, that's going to be great. And he and I are back in Vegas on November 10th for the launch party at a big event called 20 Books. So that's going to be cool. For those out there in the audience, we're going to have a lot of 20 Books authors on the next few weeks until that show because I want you guys to get to know who's going to be there. Anybody who wants to come to Vegas, it is a gathering of 300 indie authors, people like Jonathan Mayberry, Kevin J. Anderson, and others will be there, but there's also people you haven't heard of but want to. So all different genres represented. It's going to be a really great time. So think about that. November
Oh,
10th, Friday at the Horseshoe Casino and Resort Center. I'm not seeing any questions down below, so I think we're just going to keep talking for a little bit to wrap up the time. We got a few minutes left. So tell me, Tori, about what else? What else do you have going on? You are you still doing screenplays?
I did a teleplay for the pilot. If there was a Lily Wong TV series,
Oh,
because my husband was shopping that, and so that was interesting. That's the first screenplay that I've written in, gosh, probably 10 years. A while back when I was getting into to writing, just before I committed to this path, I was also, in addition to my writing, I was adapting other people's work into teleplays and screenplays. And so, I was doing that for my husband's company. And so that was kind of a very interesting experience distilling that. So here, all of a sudden, we had another producer who was also very interested in it. And she kept saying, "Oh, could you do the screenplay?" I'm like, no, 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 I don't want to do that. I'm not going to go there again. I'm doing my novel thing. And then all of a sudden I thought, this is ridiculous. And it actually came out pretty easy, and I was surprised by that. So right now, I'm kind of floating the idea with myself of doing a screenplay, not a teleplay, a screenplay for the Ninja's Oath, because I think of all my Lily Wong books, the Ninja's Oath would make the most amazing action thriller because it is when I wrote it, I said that I wanted to make it the epic conclusion, right, to the 4-book set, but I also wanted to write a standalone international action thriller. That was my goal for the Ninja's Oath, and that's why it can be read both ways. And so when I looked at that, I went, this would make a really great movie. So
yeah.
I'm thinking I have to dive into that, and
Let's
do that. I don't
let's talk a
quite
little bit
get
about
there.
that process for those. One of the reasons that all the writers talk about how they're going to screw up my book if they do a movie and all this, and I feel the same way. I mean, Shortcut is being developed into a movie, and it's been developed by the guy who co-created the story with me, named Hunt Lowry. And I tried to get him to let me do the screenplay. He doesn't want to. He wants a big name screenwriter, and part of the reason for that is that it's a completely different art form. And even though I have the advantage of having gone to film school, and having written screenplays, and even had some that were at various stages along the way over the years, the simple fact is sometimes you're too close to the material. It's hard to adapt your own material because you have to look at it as a completely different form. And you got to kill a lot of babies because there's things that work in a novel, like internal narration and internal thoughts and all of those things that you have to play out on the screen in a movie. What was that? Was there any challenge to that for you, or are you just so used to writing screenplays that you said it kind of came naturally?
Well, it's an interesting thing. I tend to be a cinematic writer anyway because probably because of my roots in screenwriting. However, there are things like when I look at the Ninja's Oath, I'm fairly certain that there are certain characters that I'm not going to need, and that I'm probably going to jump from this point to that point and not spend time on the things that got them there. Because we're looking at a 2-hour movie. We don't have all day.
Right. You can't do all the
So
backstory. You can't always do all the backstory. You have to kind of pick the key moments, that kind of stuff.
yeah. And in a novel, when you're hunting down the clues and you're going here and you're going there, there are a lot of places on the way that you may not have time for all those places. When you're looking at in a movie, sometimes you don't want all the characters that you're going to run into, and so I have to look at that. Um, and then it's nice because I like to write dialogue, and so much of the dialogue is in the book, and so that's kind of a cool thing. But
Yeah.
you go from the things that you wrote to, you have to make sure that you're looking at images. Everything a screenplay. A screenplay is basically telling the reader what they are going to see, what
Right.
they're going
Yeah.
to see, and what they're going to hear. That's what a screenplay is. And so, the settings that I've chosen in the book are probably pretty close to the settings that that would be those scenes. But
Yeah.
like I said, it won't be as many. So that'll be an interesting thing. Figuring it
Well,
out, the
the other
timing
thing
of it.
The other thing is tightening up the details. Like, you can't, like, as you know, I mean, you can't direct it for the people. So you gotta give a little less of the details and kind of pick out what's the important stuff that needs to be here when you write a description because it needs to be shorter. That kind of stuff. I mean, if you it, often if they respect the author and the author's involved and they respect the process, which obviously would be the case if Tony were involved producing, but nonetheless, they'll look at the book and dig out a lot more details. But you have to know that if you write all those details of the screenplay, you're overwriting it. That's part of the
Right,
problem.
exactly. Again, all you're putting in the screenplay is enough to tell the reader what they're seeing,
Yeah,
and the basics of again what they're seeing of the character. That's something a lot of novelists really don't kind of get a grasp on. It's just you're telling them what they're seeing. That's
yeah,
something to get in there. You don't need to tell them their history or their emotion or their all these things, because a lot of that, if you write it well, will come out in the action and will come out in the dialogue.
right. And that's, I mean, one of the advantages I tend to think I'm pretty cinematic too. Most people say, "Oh, this could be a movie" when they read my books, and part of that is simply because with Shortcut, I went through the whole development process basically with the producer, stripping out the story before I even wrote it. So that was part of the process, and he wanted to make the film. I wrote the book; he wanted to make it into a film. But with other books that I've done, I think it's because of my screenwriting background, because I got my bachelor's in radio, TV, film as a screenwriter. So, I mean, yeah, I tend to always think, because you know how important settings are so important to mood and tone and evoking all of those things and saying so much. I'm always really picky looking for what are my settings. The one thing I think I let myself do in a novel that's different than a screenplay is the same thing you were talking about with characters. I won't worry about the character count, but when you're writing a screenplay, you have to be much more concerned about how many characters, just for budget of casting all those actors, if not just people remembering who the hell are these people.
Yeah, it's very true. And something I do in novel writing that I also always did in screenwriting is, if I'm writing a chapter in a novel, I want to make sure that it has more than one reason for being in my book.
Yeah.
I like it when there's a plot progression, but there's also some kind of character relationship thing that's going in there, and then maybe an action element, whatever. I like there to be two or three real reasons for having chosen to set my chapter at that point in time in that location. And if I only have one reason for one thing that I'm accomplishing in a chapter, then I really question whether I've chosen the best place and the best time to set it in, the positioning of it. And there's usually, if that's the case, there's usually a better way to set that scene,
Yeah.
integrate action into it, put it in a different location, and all of a sudden, multiple things are happening in the scene, and it makes them much more worthy of, being in the book or on the screen.
Yeah, and I mean, and there's also those little moments like you don't want if you sometimes you do driving scenes when you're moving between locations because you can flesh out character arcs and different things while the person's thinking. But when you go on screen, some of that stuff has to go because there's nothing more boring than somebody being on a phone call or sitting in the car, all those kind of things. So some of those things all get tightened down into they have the conversation in person rather than those kind of things too. I
But
know. So
imagine a car chase while being on a phone in a relationship issue. Now that could be fun, right?
yeah,
I
I
mean, you
love to
see what
write
I'm
stuff like
saying?
that.
Yeah, now you got two things going on. Yeah.
Exactly. I love writing stuff like that where there's this whole
Yeah.
second thing going on, But I have a lot of scenes with in my cop series by John Simons where the partners are fighting, they're arguing over something, and then they're trying to arrest the guy at the same time. So it's kind of a fun, it's about their relationship while at the same time, the clerk's like, are you arresting me or what are you talking to me or are you talking to him? It's all you can play it for
It's
comedy, but it also adds the tension up, too.
Yeah, I did a whole scene in I think it was the Ninja's Blade. It was set in LA, but Lily's grandparents had come in from Hong Kong. And so the whole scene was set during a mahjong game with her
Oh,
mother and her grandparents. So they're playing mahjong while they're getting into a political discussion about the 2019 pro-democracy struggle going on in Hong Kong. And her mother trying to shut her down to keep from bringing this up while they're having a mahjong game. Stuff like that is so
I love
fun.
I love those parallels. Yeah. Well, hey, we are almost out of time. Our guest tonight on Creator Talk is Tori Eldridge. She is the award-winning or nominated author of the Lily Wong series, and she has other books as well, including her dark fantasy. Which again, why am I blanking on the name of this? I'm
Dancing on
sorry.
the Flame. That's okay. You guys
Dancing
can
on the
go to my
Flames. Dancing on
profile
the Flames. Yes. Sorry.
and you will see cool stuff.
Okay, you've got it there. Okay. Yeah, check out her profile. Please follow her. That's the reason she's not on camera. She doesn't have enough followers left. She's still learning TikTok, so let's help her out. Follow her. Please like this show. Come back tomorrow night at the same time. We're going to have another guest, a good friend of ours named Jonathan Mayberry. We're going to have creators every night this week and the following week and so on as long as we can go, as long as people are interested. Anyway, Tori, hey, thanks for making time to come on and talk. I've really enjoyed this. It's been fun for me to get to know you.
This has been so fun. Such a kick. My first TikTok live. I've never done one before.
Well, you did a great job. You see how it works now. Yeah. Yeah. The only thing that gets more distracting is when you're winging it and you have we didn't have a lot of audience interrupting us with commentary or questions tonight for whatever reason. So I think it's because we're new, but that's when it gets really interesting.
Oh my.
So yeah, and then when you're on screen too, and you forget that you're on screen, and you scratch an itch or you do something, you have to pay attention to what you're doing, or your husband walks through in the background in his underwear because he doesn't realize you're on, or those kind of crazy things. And there's all
That's
kinds of
hilarious.
filters you can put on to make yourself look better than you are too, if you want. So you'll have fun playing with that. And anyway, thank you for being my guinea pig for the first show. I think it went really well. I hope everybody out there enjoyed it. Please check out again the books by Tori Eldridge. You can get them at bookstores everywhere. You can get them on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. You can get them at your local indie store. They are everywhere. Just if they're not available, order them in. There's audiobooks with Natalie Nadas. Really great stuff. She's a great narrator, And let's give some love and support here. She's writing about strong women and action thrillers, basically, and little elements of mystery and things. A little bit of fantasy thrown in. So anyway, thank you, Tori, again for coming on to Creator Talk, and bless you, and we wish you continued success.
Okay, mahalo, my friend.
Mahalo. Have a good night, Tori.